Have you ever been blindsided by someone who thinks they own you? That was me, standing in my driveway, staring at a bright pink violation notice that could cost me hundreds. For what? Tinting my car windows. At first I thought it was a mistake, but then I saw him. My neighbor, smirking, watching. And that's when I realized this wasn't about a rule. It was a trap, one that would cost him everything. Stick around because what I did next turned this entire HOA upside down. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where you want nothing more than to sip coffee in peace, maybe listen to the birds, and forget the chaos of the work week. But instead of tranquility, I was greeted by a flash of neon pink taped to my front door like a scarlet letter of shame. HOA violation notice. My heart sank before I even read the words. With trembling hands, I peeled it off and scanned the page, my pulse thundering with each line. You have been found in violation of the HOA rules for performing unauthorized auto work in your driveway. Auto work? I blinked, confused. My eyes darted to the car in my driveway, the same car I had yesterday, except now its windows were tinted. That's it. I had paid a guy $50 to apply a light tint to keep the summer heat from turning my car into an oven. That's all. But according to this letter, I had broken a rule. A big one, apparently. At first, I laughed, because how could this possibly be real? No major auto repairs allowed in the driveway. That's what the covenants, conditions, and restrictions manual said. But last time I checked, tinting windows wasn't an engine swap. It wasn't even messy. There were no oil stains, no loud noises, nothing. So why was this sitting on my door, screaming at me in bold capital letters like I'd committed some neighborhood felony? And then my stomach tightened. Someone had reported me. These things didn't just happen randomly. The HOA didn't patrol every house on a Saturday morning. No. Someone had seen me, picked up the phone, and tattled. And as I stood there clutching the violation, a cold wind seemed to sweep across my perfect little suburban street. Neighbors' manicured lawns looked less inviting. Windows felt like eyes. And then my gaze landed across the street, at his house. Big, beige, with the obnoxiously symmetrical flower beds and the expensive flagpole that screamed, "I'm important." And there he was, my neighbor, the one who never waved, the one who barely acknowledged our existence since we moved in. He was standing on his porch, arms crossed, smirk curling at the edges of his mouth like he was savoring a secret joke. In that instant, I knew. He did this. He was on the board. He had the power. And now, he had a target. Me. And just like that, my quiet morning turned into the start of a war I never asked for. I couldn't stop staring at him. The man across the street, let's call him Greg, he looked exactly like the kind of guy who lived for rules, the kind who treated the HOA handbook like the Bible and himself as its self-appointed prophet. Always crisp polo shirts tucked into khakis, always patrolling his yard like a general inspecting his troops. He never waved, never smiled. From the moment we moved in, I sensed it. He didn't like us. And now, standing there with that smug little grin as I clutched the violation letter, it all clicked. This wasn't random. This was personal. I went back inside, my mind spinning like a storm. My husband was in the kitchen, pouring cereal, oblivious to the silent war brewing outside. I slapped the letter on the counter, and he frowned as he read it. "Seriously? For tinting your windows?" His laugh was dry, humorless. "That's insane." Insane, yes. But there was a method to it. Greg was on the HOA board. The same board that had the power to fine us, penalize us, even put a lien on our home if they wanted to make life miserable enough. And Greg, he had never spoken to us beyond a curt nod, never came to welcome us when we moved in like the other neighbors. No cookies, no, "Hi, I'm Greg." Just silence. The kind that speaks louder than words. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. How Greg always seemed to be outside when we were doing something, unloading groceries, having friends over, trimming hedges. How his eyes would linger, calculating, like he was filing away every detail for later. And then there was the HOA meeting flyer I found tucked into the mailbox that same day. Monthly board meeting, Tuesday, 6 p.m. at the community hall. A little note scrawled in pen, "Attendance is encouraged." Was that for everyone? Or just for me? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I wasn't some rule-breaking rebel. I followed the guidelines, paid my dues on time, kept my yard neat. But Greg had decided to make me his project. And why? Because I tinted my windows? Or was it something deeper? Something uglier? Maybe we didn't fit his picture-perfect HOA fantasy. Maybe he just liked the power trip. Either way, one thing was clear. This wasn't about rules. This was about control. And if Greg wanted a war, he'd picked the wrong opponent. Because I wasn't about to roll over and let him humiliate me. Not in my own driveway, not in my own home. I folded the violation letter neatly, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in the drawer. A calm settled over me, the kind that comes right before a storm. I didn't know exactly how yet, but one thing was certain. I was going to make Greg regret ever starting this fight. Tuesday evening arrived, and the air outside felt heavy, almost electric, like the universe knew something was about to go down. The community hall glowed warm and inviting, but stepping inside felt like entering enemy territory. A long oak table stretched across the room, lined with HOA board members, 5 of them in total. And there he was, Greg, seated dead center like a king presiding over his court, his hands folded neatly, his smug little smile firmly in place. The kind of smile that says, "We've already decided your fate." I walked in slowly, every eye turning to me. Conversations hushed. The sound of my heels clicking against the hardwood floor was deafening in the silence. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest, but I didn't let it show. If Greg wanted me intimidated, he was in for a surprise. I slid into a chair near the edge of the table, locked eyes with him, and gave the sweetest, fakest smile I could muster. The meeting droned on about landscaping budgets and community pool hours, but I barely heard a word. My focus was on him. Finally, the topic shifted. "Next item on the agenda," the chairperson announced, glancing at a clipboard. Vehicle violations. A resident was recently cited for performing unauthorized automotive work in their driveway. Every head turned toward me. Greg leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Yes," he said smoothly, his voice oozing false politeness. "It's a clear violation of Section 4.2 of the HOA covenants. No major vehicle repairs on the property. And tinting windows, as we all know, falls under that category." He smiled that condescending smile again. Game over, his eyes seemed to say. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but instead of snapping, I let a slow, measured smile spread across my face. "Actually," I began, my voice calm, almost cheerful. I brought my copy of the handbook. I pulled the well-worn booklet from my bag and placed it on the table with a satisfying thud. Greg's smile faltered just slightly. Good. I flipped to the page and read aloud, each word like a bullet. "No major vehicle repairs may be conducted on the property." I looked up, meeting Greg's gaze. "Could you please point out where it says window tinting qualifies as a major repair?" Silence. Pure, delicious silence. Greg cleared his throat, fumbling for words. It's implied," he stammered. "Oh?" I tilted my head, feigning innocence. "Because I also checked with the state regulations. Window tinting is classified as cosmetic, not structural, so unless the board can provide an official definition proving otherwise, I'd say this violation is invalid." The room shifted, eyes darted. The chairperson coughed. Greg's jaw tightened, his face flushing red. I had landed the first punch, and it felt good. But this wasn't over. Not even close. This was just round 1. After that meeting, you'd think Greg would back off, right? Wrong. If anything, my little victory seemed to light a fire under him. Suddenly, it felt like I had a shadow. Everywhere I went, Greg wasn't far behind. Not physically, but through those passive-aggressive violation notices that kept showing up like unwanted guests. My mailbox became a war zone. One day it was trash can left out too long. The next, it was porch decor not in compliance. Seriously, a seasonal wreath? That was his smoking gun? Each letter came sealed with that same HOA logo, and each one chipped away at my patience. But instead of breaking me, it fueled something else. A plan. Here's what you need to understand. Greg wasn't just a nosy neighbor. He was the type who lived for control. The kind of man who ironed his socks and color-coded his pantry. And the power of the HOA? Oh, it wasn't just a hobby for him, it was his identity. Without that title, Greg was just another guy with a mortgage and thinning hair. And deep down, I think he knew it. That's what made this so satisfying. So, I started watching him. No, not in a creepy way. Just paying attention. Patterns, routines, habits. When did he check his mail? When did he mow his lawn? Who did he talk to? And then, jackpot. One crisp Saturday morning, I saw it. Greg washing his car in the driveway, hose in one hand, sponge in the other, suds running down the curb like a river of irony. Why is that ironic? Because according to the same HOA handbook Greg loved to shove down everyone's throat, washing cars in the driveway was prohibited. Something about water runoff and eco-regulations. I stood there at my window, sipping coffee, watching him scrub those hubcaps like he was detailing a Ferrari instead of a basic mid-range sedan. And I laughed. Oh, the poetic justice of it all. But I didn't act right away. No, this had to be perfect. I needed timing, evidence, and just the right amount of humiliation to make it sting. So I started documenting. Pictures, timestamps, everything. Every time Greg broke a rule, and trust me, there were plenty, I added it to my little digital dossier. Patio furniture out past the HOA approved season? Snap. Lawn height exceeding regulation? Click. And the best one? That car wash, complete with running water pooling in the street like a guilty confession. With every photo, my anticipation grew. I wasn't just planning revenge, I was orchestrating a symphony. And when it played, Greg wouldn't just hear the music, he'd be center stage, dancing to my tune. But here's the thing about revenge. It's not just about the act. It's about the buildup, the suspense, the quiet satisfaction of knowing the storm is coming and your enemy has no umbrella. And Greg? He had no idea he was standing in the rain. The beauty of revenge lies in the silence before the strike. The calm, calculated stillness that hides a storm brewing just out of sight. That was me. Every smile, every wave I threw Greg's way was a carefully sharpened blade wrapped in velvet. He thought he was winning, parading around the neighborhood like some self-appointed sheriff. But what he didn't know? I was building his gallows, one screenshot at a time. By now, my dossier on Greg was a masterpiece. Every infraction cataloged, every timestamp precise. Washing his car? Check. Leaving his trash bins out an extra day? Double check. Installing those string lights across his patio, completely against HOA rules? Oh, that was the crown jewel. And it wasn't just photos. I had videos. High-definition clips of his little rule-breaking moments, each one singing the same tune, hypocrisy. But evidence alone wasn't enough. I needed an audience. I wanted Greg's downfall to echo in the very halls he strutted through like a king. And what better stage than the quarterly HOA meeting? The same meeting where he loved to lecture others on maintaining community standards. That was where Greg would choke on his own arrogance. The plan was simple, but deadly. First, I reached out to a couple of neighbors, quietly, discreetly. The ones Greg had ticked off with his nitpicking, his smug reminders about mailbox paint colors, his obsession with lawn heights. Let's just say, finding allies wasn't hard. People were tired of him, and the moment I hinted at exposing something big, their curiosity flared like gasoline on fire. Meanwhile, Greg was still oblivious, still patrolling the neighborhood like a watchdog with a superiority complex. The more confident he looked, the sweeter this was going to taste. Then came the final touch. I drafted an anonymous email to the HOA board. Not accusing, just inquiring. Something along the lines of, curious if board members are also held to the same standards as residents, noticed a few discrepancies. Nothing lights a fire under a bureaucratic backside like the whisper of hypocrisy. And just like that, the wheels started turning. I could almost hear the gears grinding in their pristine little offices as panic began to seep into the cracks. By the time the meeting day rolled around, the stage was set. My evidence folder was loaded like a revolver, and I was ready to pull the trigger. But Greg? Poor Greg had no clue he was walking into his own execution. In fact, when I saw him that morning, strutting down his driveway with that smug little grin, he even waved at me. That wave wasn't just a hello, it was a signature on the death warrant of his reputation. And as I walked toward that meeting, my heart wasn't pounding with fear. No, it was steady, calm, because this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice, served ice cold. The HOA meeting was held in the community clubhouse. a space Greg practically considered his throne room. Velvet chairs, mahogany tables, neatly arranged bottled water. Everything screamed control and order, the very things Greg worshipped. And there he was, perched at the head of the table like a smug emperor, flipping through his little binder of violations with that same condescending smirk. People trickled in slowly, neighbors, curious, whispering, throwing sidelong glances. There was tension in the air, an electric charge humming beneath the polite chatter. They didn't know exactly what was about to happen, but they felt it. And Greg? Oh, he was glowing in the spotlight, his ego practically fogging up the room. He even stood up as I walked in, beaming like some benevolent ruler greeting his subjects. "Glad you could make it," he said loudly, making sure everyone heard. "We were just about to discuss a few ongoing issues." He tapped his binder dramatically, and a few heads turned. His little performance was textbook Greg, loud, arrogant, and itching for applause. I smiled back, calm, controlled, because I knew something he didn't. This was his last show. The meeting started with the usual drivel: budget allocations, landscaping updates, maintenance schedules. Greg chimed in every chance he got, inserting himself like a weed in a manicured lawn. And then the moment came. "Next," Greg announced, flipping a page with theatrical flair, "we need to address a pattern of violations regarding yard decor, unapproved alterations, and excessive holiday lighting." His eyes flicked toward me, and there it was, that triumphant glint. He thought he was about to humiliate me in front of everyone. But before he could finish his little monologue, I leaned forward, calm as a sniper taking aim. "Actually," I said, my voice smooth as silk, "before we get into that, I think the board should see something." All eyes turned to me as I pulled out a neatly organized folder and slid it across the table toward the HOA president. Inside, high-resolution photos, date-stamped, videos, a gallery of Greg's greatest hits, illegal patio lights twinkling, trash bins sitting out for days, his precious car parked halfway on the curb. Every violation he had accused others of, he had done them all. The room went silent, dead silent. Then whispers erupted like a hive of angry bees. The HOA president's face darkened as she flipped through the evidence. Greg's smirk faltered. His hands twitched. "This," the president began, her voice cold as steel, "is a serious breach of HOA guidelines. By a board member, no less." She turned to Greg. "Care to explain?" Greg opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His empire was crumbling, and every second dragged him deeper into the rubble. And me. I sat back, sipping water, watching the king choke on his crown. The room was thick with tension now, every pair of eyes glued to Greg as he stammered like a fish flopping on dry land. His once confident grin had vanished, replaced by a pallid mask of panic. Beads of sweat rolled down his temple, darkening the collar of his perfectly pressed polo shirt. This isn't what it looks like," he finally choked out, voice cracking under the weight of his crumbling authority. "Those lights, they were temporary. And the trash bins, I was out of town." But no one was buying it. The photos didn't lie, and neither did the timestamps glaring back like damning neon signs. The HOA president, who had once treated Greg like royalty, now looked at him as if he were something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. Her lips curled into a thin, cold line. "Greg," she said, her voice calm but lethal, "you've accused multiple residents of violations while repeatedly breaking the very rules you swore to uphold. That's not just hypocrisy, it's abuse of authority." The whispers grew louder, morphing into audible murmurs of disapproval. One neighbor, a sweet old lady who Greg had fined for having a bird feeder, leaned forward with a wicked smile. "Looks like Karma's serving a full course tonight," she muttered, just loud enough for the room to hear. A ripple of laughter followed. Greg's face flushed crimson. His jaw clenched. He shot me a look so venomous it could have curdled steel. But I didn't flinch. I simply tilted my head and offered him the sweetest, most innocent smile I could muster. Inside, though, I was savoring every second of this symphony of justice. The HOA president didn't waste time. She slammed her gavel down, a sharp crack that echoed through the room like a gunshot. "Effective immediately," she declared. "Greg is removed from the board. Furthermore, fines will be issued for every documented violation." The room erupted, not in anger, but in applause. Actual applause. Neighbors clapped, some even cheered. Phones came out, recording his walk of shame. Greg stumbled to his feet, his ego shattered into a million jagged shards. He tried to maintain what little dignity he had left, chin up, shoulders back, but the quiver in his lips gave him away. As he stormed past me, he hissed through clenched teeth, "You'll regret this." I leaned in just enough for only him to hear and whispered, "No, Greg, this is me finally living without regrets." He froze for a fraction of a second, just long enough for me to see the defeat in his eyes, before pushing through the doors and disappearing into the night. But here's the twist no one saw coming. Just when I thought the show was over, life handed me an encore. Days after Greg's humiliating downfall, the neighborhood was buzzing like a hive shaken from its stand. People waved at me with knowing smiles. Some even came by to thank me for standing up for the little guy. But amid all the congratulations, something gnawed at me. A rumor. It started innocently enough, a passing comment from Mrs. Patterson while watering her roses. "You heard about Greg's other house, right?" I blinked. "Other house?" She leaned in, lowering her voice like she was sharing state secrets. "Oh, honey, turns out Greg's been renting out a short-term property just outside the HOA limits. And guess what? He used HOA funds to renovate it." My stomach dropped. Funds? As in, our money? No wonder the guy strutted around like a peacock at a turkey farm. He wasn't just power drunk, he was cashing in on it. That night, I couldn't sleep. My laptop glowed in the darkness as I fell headfirst into a rabbit hole of property records, transaction receipts, and whispers in neighborhood Facebook groups. And there it was. A smoking gun so big it could have burned down the whole HOA. Greg had been funneling HOA resources into his side hustle for years. The hypocrisy was bad enough before. But now, this wasn't just petty tyranny. It was full-blown embezzlement. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears, a cocktail of rage and exhilaration coursing through me. The next HOA meeting wasn't for weeks, and I wasn't about to wait. I gathered every screenshot, every bank statement, every traceable expense, and wrapped it all in one neat little digital bow. Then, I sent it. Not to the board, not to Greg, but to every single homeowner in the community. The response was nuclear. Phones lit up like Christmas trees. Neighbors who once cowered under Greg's wrath were suddenly warriors armed with truth. A petition formed within hours. Prosecute Greg. By sunrise, Greg's world was crumbling faster than a sandcastle in a hurricane. His phone number leaked, his smug reputation torn to shreds. And the best part? Someone snapped a photo of Greg loading boxes into a U-Haul under the cover of darkness. His perfect suburban kingdom reduced to cardboard and duct tape. But the real cherry on top? Oh, that came 2 weeks later, when a shiny new sign appeared at the HOA entrance. Board Transparency Initiative, effective immediately. No more secret fines, no more petty power trips, and definitely no more Greg. As I walked past that sign, I couldn't help but smile. Not the kind of smile that says I won. No, this was deeper. It was the smile of someone who took on the monster and didn't just survive. They burned the whole damn lair down. And if Greg thought this was over, well, let's just say karma's still got his address. Sometimes power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. Greg thought his title gave him the right to humiliate and control others. But in the end, his arrogance became the rope he used to hang himself. I didn't just fight back for me, I fought back for everyone who has ever been bullied by someone hiding behind rules they twist for their own gain. And let me tell you, justice doesn't always come knocking. Sometimes you have to kick the damn door down yourself. The lesson? Don't underestimate the quiet ones. The people they think are easy targets are the same ones who can dismantle their empire piece by piece. Greg learned that the hard way, and I can't say I'm sorry. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping HOA revenge tales just like this one. And tell me in the comments, what's the pettiest HOA rule you've ever seen? Because honestly, some of these make reality TV look sane. Hit that bell icon so you never miss another story that all make you want to grab popcorn and watch karma do her thing. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss what's coming next.